So, welcome to the Scuffed Football Podcast, hosted by CCG. My name is Ted, and this is Noah. We're here to talk to you each and every week about football. Real simple. We'll cover games, some highlights, scores. We'll cover big news stories that are happening. This week in particular, we'll do some prediction stuff as the season's just getting started. And then we'll also touch on topics such as fantasy and gambling advice. Not that you should follow any of it. But, well, Noah, how we living, man? What you excited about? What's caught your attention in the offseason?
I'm ready to see the Bills go to work, honestly. Listen, I think the addition is going to be great, and I think it's going to be really ideal. So,
yeah, man, I went to college like not super far away from Buffalo, so like just kind of a passive Bills fan. It'll be exciting to see somebody not the Patriots just completely dominate that division for a long time. And watching Josh Allen is a blast. He's so ridiculously good. I think my Eagles got better too. I liked a lot of the defensive moves, adding the receivers. I'm pretty excited. As long as they can stay healthy, I think they can make a run.
I think so too. I think that I think you got Jalen Hurts is better than everyone's telling us he is. So.
And I think it's going to be better too that like now they have like an organized playbook. He's got receivers to throw to. It's not just him and Devontae Smith or Smith. Shit. Can't think of his first name. Anyway.
I know who you're talking about. Their star receiver.
Yeah. Can't come up with his first name. I wanted to go Devontae Adams, and that's just not right. It's something Smith. Whatever. But one of the things that caught my eye this offseason was a whole bunch of players changing teams. It's been a very long time since I've seen so many quarterbacks change teams. Russell Wilson's with the Broncos now. I thought he was going to retire with the Seahawks. Matt Ryan in Indianapolis looks really good. Obviously, Deshaun Watson moving. Carson Wentz back in the NFC East with the Commanders. Even some of the re-signings. Brady coming back kind of surprised me. Jameis Winston getting re-signed. Like there's a whole ton of quarterback moves that have really flabbergasted me, and I'm wondering who you're most excited for, or who you think's going to succeed, not succeed.
I think I'm most excited for the Deshaun Watson move. I do think that is, again, obviously he's out for 11 games, but I do think that Browns team is built to win now, and I don't think Baker Mayfield was that guy. While I think he's going to thrive, like Baker will thrive with the Panthers, I don't think he was right for that offense. And I think Deshaun will really show and, continue to be the star that he was before his suspension and leave. So,
yeah, I'm kind of excited to see Baker in a new place, mostly just because I feel like while he's not Tom Brady, he's not Peyton Manning, like he's still a really good quarterback. The issue is just like how much do you sign him for? Because he's going to want big money, but has he proven he's worth it? My big question with Deshaun Watson at this point is like, can the Browns stand 11 games without him? If he only plays 6 games this season, can he really put him in the playoffs? I know they've got a pretty weak division, but
again, their quarterback isn't also the strongest of their backup. So I do agree. I think that the re-signing of Jimmy Garoppolo was really big on. I think that's who they wanted to be their backup, essentially. And I think that re-signing of Jimmy G staying in the 49ers is really detrimental to the playoff chances of the Browns.
Yeah. I don't know that they could have afforded him anyway. Like, while it would have been nice, I don't know how much you can trust Jacoby Brissett to be that good through 11 games. I mean, it'll be hard to beat the Ravens. I don't know how good Cincinnati's going to be this year versus last year, but they're not free wins anymore.
Exactly. Right.
Pittsburgh with Mitchell Trubisky, or I guess we don't know about Kenny Pickett yet, but like that doesn't feel like a super winnable division, even if it's not the best division in football. That 11 games is a long time to be without a guy like Deshaun Watson and to trust Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, someone who didn't even really start too many, even when he was considered a starter.
I think I'm most excited for Matt Ryan to be not in Atlanta anymore. I
have seen some of the practice footage where he's tossing it up, and I like the chemistry that he's been showing with them. I will agree with that.
He's been such a good quarterback for such a long time, and Atlanta just gets worse and worse and worse every single year. The moment they lost Julio Jones, it felt like his career was just going to die in Atlanta. But I thought that all Indy's offense last year was missing was a passing game. I mean, Jonathan Taylor was out of his mind, but they just couldn't trust Wentz to throw the ball. Like I'll be really excited to see what Matt Ryan can put together in really a pretty easy division.
Right, and especially with having that supporting cast now.
Oh, absolutely. If Jonathan Taylor plays half as good as he did last season, I mean, he's an MVP candidate. Then to also add in a passing game that isn't running around on 2 broken ankles all season long is huge.
I agree. I think that we won't really talk too much about like offensive linemen and all that throughout this podcast, but I will say that the Falcons offensive line versus Indy's offensive line is significantly different. I think that Matt will enjoy that.
Absolutely. I'd like to see him do something, but the other one that got me pretty interested was the Dolphins signing Teddy Bridgewater. I've always been a Bridgewater fan. I've always thought that he is better than he gets credit for, and I know the injury history. Like, I understand why he's scary to commit to, but that feels like a whole lot of we don't have faith in Tua when they put so much into his lap this year to succeed.
I don't know. I think that might just be an honest, like, get a decent backup quarterback, because I think they are also considering the fact that Tua hasn't played a lot. And on top of that, he also does have massive injuries in his history. So I think that move might actually be more of like a trying to make sure we have a backup quarterback if that time comes. Because I think that if they really wanted a better quarterback, I think that I would have, if I was in the Dolphins front office, I would have traded for Deshaun, despite knowing the 11 games. I think that Deshaun is a better quarterback than Tua overall. So I think that might just be like a backup signing. Like, we might just need to secure that playoff berth.
I kind of like, I thought the same thing, but I also find it difficult to think that like you'd go after a guy as good or as expensive as Bridgewater when there are other guys on the market. Mariota was available. Jacoby Brissett was available before the Browns picked him up. Drew Lock was up. Wasn't Tyrod Taylor available? I think he signed with the Giants. Like, there were other guys you could have gone to get cheaper if you're like, that would, I guess, allow Tua to feel confident that he's the starter and not that there's a starting caliber quarterback sitting right behind him and waiting.
But again, naming off all those quarterback names, there's only one name that's really like, they're good enough to be a starter, which is Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think that I see Drew Lock as a starter. I don't see, like all those other. I don't see Jacoby Brissett as a starter. Like, he's not a full-time starter. Whereas I think that Bridgewater has proven that he is a winner, obviously in the Saints and New Orleans and all that. So I think that again, that's my side. I think that's just a backup signing for good.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. Bama fan, so I kind of want to see Tua succeed and do something, especially with such a good offensive roster. But
I don't know if this is going to work anymore. A Bama
fan. I know you were talking about some other moves when we prepped this. The one obviously that came up with the Dolphins was Tyreek Hill. That was a massive get. I didn't think he would even be available, but he's really going to open up that offense in Miami.
Yeah, I agree. I did not see him going anywhere at all. I thought he was going to retire there with Patty, but I'm surprised and I'm excited because I obviously know the potential that he brings to an offense in general and just as himself. So I think that Tua will have a nice either number 1 or number 2 option.
Yeah, with Waddle being there too. That's a fast team, man. Those guys can move with Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and Raheem Mostert also has some wheels, man. That team's gonna be hard to keep up with. If they get in the open field, they're scoring.
And Tua in general, he's actually pretty fast. So
yeah. We talked a lot, or I've heard a lot, I guess, about how much Tyreek Hill makes the Dolphins better. But I think what I'm more interested in from that move is how much worse the Chiefs get because of it. Like, I don't know that they have the same deep threat for Mahomes without him, and how that offense is going to look different. I've got full faith in Andy Reid to draft an offense that works, but can it be as good without him?
I don't think it's going to be as good. I will say that. But I think that this is going to be a really big year for smaller receivers on that team, like McCole Hardman. They are speedsters as well. They're just not as known. They weren't as targeted as much as Tyreek Hill. So I think I think it's their time to either step up or you're going to be shipped out. But I think they do have the pieces to kind of make up that gap. I don't think they're going to make it up all the way because there's not really another receiver like Tyreek Hill.
God knows that's true.
But it will be interesting to keep that story going.
I'll be interested too because I think that division is super competitive. I mean, I still think the Broncos are going to finish last in that division, even with Russell Wilson. But that's mostly just because the Chargers are so good. The Chiefs used to feel like they were a lock to win that division every year, and now without Tyreek Hill, I can't be as confident that Chargers or Vegas don't make some noise.
Right, especially with Justin Herbert. You saw how good he was last season. Now he's just getting better. And I will, again, the Raiders are getting a lot better as well. So, I mean, I would say that definitely it's not a lock for the Chiefs to make it. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
What other moves got your attention this offseason?
I think the biggest thing for me was actually it's a free agent that's still unsigned in OBJ. I do think he was pretty big in the Rams Super Bowl run. He was big in the parts in the Super Bowl he played before he got injured. And I think that with Von Miller trying to recruit him to Buffalo, I think it'd be really interesting if he left, but I don't know if he would. I do think that if the Bills got OBJ, I think it's kind of done in that conference. I think that the Bills would be in the Super Bowl. But again, I don't know if just Von Miller saying come out is enough to convince OBJ to go from extreme opposites from the beach to ice tundra all the time.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too because there's a lot of teams that I know he could help, but I'm just not sure how well he fits or genuinely what he's looking for in a contract. I mean, part of the reason that I think he had so much success in the Rams playoff run was that he was willing to be a second or a third guy on that team where
he has learned to be second fiddle now. Yeah.
Right. So if he can sit behind Diggs in Buffalo and just be the second guy on that roster, okay, let's do it. But, if your contract is going to be, huge record breaking numbers, that limits the amount of teams he can go to and who he can help out because he's got to be the guy instead of the second or third guy. Seeing where he fits, it would be really interesting. And obviously, like you said, I mean, signing him in Buffalo would mean that division's over, that conference is probably over. That's just they chalk it up. You can put him in the big game now.
So much easier for them. But yeah,
any other moves really catch your attention? Anything else you feel like was notable that happened this offseason?
Honestly, not really. I think that I do think that one of the things that I do actually really like, another move, yes, just one more. The signing of Marquis Brown to the Cardinals. Yeah. I think that's going to be very, very big. I think that Kyler Murray is going to enjoy that, having second fiddle again. But again, for the first 6 games, I think he's going to have to play first fiddle until DeAndre Hopkins comes back. But I think that was a great move by them to help boost that roster.
Well, and I think it helps too that, I mean, the last couple of seasons we've watched Kyler Murray be good for 9 or 10 weeks. Call of Duty gets released and his gameplay gets worse. Right, but exactly. Their offense doesn't necessarily have to be stale now. I mean, if you have Marquise Brown for the first 6 weeks, then DeAndre Hopkins comes back. Well, now you can totally change the playbook. I mean, you've got 2 really big, really good receivers that are out there that it's not just throw the ball to this guy or run the ball. You can really be dynamic and change some play calls. I hope it opens up Arizona's offense to stay good throughout the season instead of just starting hot.
No, I definitely will agree with that.
Yeah, it should be an interesting year. I'd like to see Kyler Murray do well and earn his contract. To be honest with you, got paid a lot of money, and I think he's a good quarterback that deserves it. But I think we need to see more than we have. So, I guess with that we can start moving into some predictions. Get into each division. I guess we'll throw out a division, pick a winner, give a sentence or two. We'll go back and forth and go from there. Starting in the AFC East, we got
Listen, the East, I already know. Like, I hate to tell you, but it's gonna be the Bills. Like, even without OBJ, I think that they're the most powerful team right now. Again, last season they were even crazy. That game against the Chiefs, that was by far the best game we'd had all season. Crazy ending, but I do believe that the Bills have the strongest offense, strongest defense in that division. So that's my pick.
Yeah, I'd take the Bills too. I think the Dolphins could make some noise as a wild card team, but I just don't see them having a better record at the end of the year than the Bills. Yeah. Moving to the AFC North. For me personally, I think I'm going to give it to the Bengals. I don't know that they're going to be as good this year as last year, but I also don't see the Ravens being as good either. Browns I'm down on just because they're missing their quarterback for 11 games. The Steelers I'm down on because there's so many questions with their quarterbacks. I don't trust Trubisky at all, and I don't know if Pickett is ready to step in and be a 10-game, 11-game winner his rookie season. So I think I'm taking the Bengals, but I think it's going to be a tight one.
I would have to agree. I think the Bengals would go first, but I think it would be maybe one or two games like behind would be the Ravens. But again, like we know that the Ravens are good during the normal season, but in the postseason they just crumble. So it will be interesting to see if, again, this time maybe Lamar Jackson does something different. But again, that loss of Marquis Brown is going to be very big. So I agree. Bengals go number one here.
All right. Moving to the South.
I would say the Titans. Honestly, I think that's probably one of the easiest divisions right now, and I think the Titans are the only ones that I do think the Colts can make some noise, but I don't see the Jags nor the Texans being up at the top there. So,
yeah, as much as I loved Doug Peterson and his Super Bowl run with the Eagles, I don't think he's that great a coach that I don't think the Jags are going to look any different this year than the last 20 years. The Texans, I don't see them being very good at all. They may even finish behind Jacksonville, to be honest with you. But I think I'm taking the Colts. They were a pretty decent team last year. I think the Titans really relied on Derrick Henry, which I guess if you can game plan around it, makes that harder to repeat. And I think having Matt Ryan instead of Carson Wentz just makes Indy so much better. Like, I think they could be a dark horse for the Super Bowl if somebody can get through Buffalo.
Right. Okay.
All right, last one in the AFC is the West. This one's really tough for me. I think I still have to pick the Chiefs because it's hard for me to not believe in them until I've seen that I shouldn't. But it's also kind of hard to pick against the Chargers knowing that they got better and the Chiefs roster got worse. I think I'm taking the Chiefs, but the Chargers could make some noise and be right there with them.
I'm going to have to go with Chargers on this one. I do believe that the additions and just in general getting better over the past, season and off season is going to be enough to take away the Chiefs. I think that if anything, I actually think the Chiefs are going to be third in this division. I think it's going to go Chargers, Raiders, and then Chiefs. Because even, last season, the Raiders gave the Chiefs a run for their money. I do believe that the Chargers will win this, and I think the Raiders will get better than the Chiefs.
I'm just going to put it out there in the universe now. I'm claiming that Carr is going to win the MVP this season. I see it coming. Even if they don't win the division, he's my MVP pick. He's due for one. He's due for one. And with a stable coach all year long, I'm telling you, he's going to have it this year. He's my MVP.
Okay. Interesting choice.
All right. Moving to the NFC. We'll start again in the East.
I don't know, man. I guess I'm gonna put my trust in the Eagles out of those four teams. I do think that the Cowboys will obviously be near the top, but I don't see the Giants or Commanders making overall too much noise in that division. Yeah, I know the Commanders did get better, but I don't trust them.
I don't trust Carson Wentz. I thought he was gonna have a good year in Indy, and then it just fell apart. So I definitely don't believe in the Commanders at all. I agree that the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to be top two, but it's hard for me as a Philly fan to believe that the Eagles are going to win the division. I've watched the Cowboys just be good for so many years now. Dak Prescott stays healthy, and they were a 14-win team last season. Their run game is still good. Their line is still good. They've got great receivers, a great defense. I think the Cowboys are probably going to win that division. I'm hoping the Eagles win, obviously, but it's hard for me to say that the Cowboys won't win the division. They're going to be the Cowboys in the playoffs and biff it somewhere, but I think both teams will make the playoffs. I just don't see the Eagles having a better record than the Cowboys at the end of it.
That's fair, yeah.
All right, we'll move to the North. I think this is one of the easier divisions for me because I don't see anybody being as good as the Packers. I think the Vikings will still make the playoffs, and Hard Knocks has given me a little bit of faith in the Lions, even though I know I shouldn't. But the Packers are just too good. Aaron Rodgers is going to make the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be close.
It's always a lock for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I think that division. I will say that the Lions, I do trust DeAndre Swift a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust Jared Goff. So I will say that it's definitely probably going to go Packers, Vikings, and the Lions will miss out on again. But again, I do trust that DeAndre Swift will definitely be a vital offensive player.
See, I trust Goff to be serviceable. I don't trust him to be game-breaking. The one I don't trust is Dan Campbell. I think their coach is just an insane person. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the South. Who you got?
I got to go with the Bucks, unfortunately. I do think that the Saints will make some noise. I do trust that the re-signing will be good for both parties. But again, I don't think that Jameis Winston is as good as Tom Brady. And I think that the receiving core around Brady is significantly better than the receiving core on the Saints as of right now. And again, with the Panthers and Falcons, there's really not a lot considering. I mean, again, you did just get Baker, but you always have an injury to Christian McCaffrey, so you have to worry about that. And I don't think that Baker can carry the Panthers to a playoff berth.
See, I'm gonna take the Panthers. As hard as it is to fight against Tom Brady and his worth and his value as a quarterback, I just don't think he looks all there this year. He doesn't look healthy. He doesn't look like his head's quite in the right spot. I know the Bucs are still a really good roster. I know that a C-rate quarterback could probably carry that team to 8 wins. But I think Baker's got something to prove. I think Christian McCaffrey having a solid offensive game outside of just give him the ball 450 times this season, like, if he can stay healthy this season, I really think the Panthers can take it. The Saints, we'll see. Jameis Winston is a decent quarterback. He just turns the ball over too much. I think it'll be hard to win some games. The Falcons are just going to bottom feed in that division, and then I think taking Mariota where they used to have Matt Ryan is only going to make them worse too. All right, last division we got here. Another real tough one is the NFC West. I can confidently say that I know the Seahawks are going to finish at the bottom of that division. I
would agree with that.
Picking between the Rams and the Cardinals for the regular season is so difficult. I trust the Rams to win more when it matters. Like, I would trust them in a playoff environment, but the Cardinals have started so good the past few seasons. Obviously, adding Marquis Brown makes them even more electric on offense, that it's really hard to pick against them, and I think the Cardinals will take the division for the regular season.
I don't know if I agree. Like, I want to, but at the same time, I also think that seeing Stafford in his second year, like, they might have lost some players on the defensive end, but on the offensive end, Stafford's now even more comfortable with that offense. He's more comfortable with Cooper Kupp. He's more comfortable with, just everything about that offense. And, in the first year that he was there, they won a Super Bowl and they had one of the top records. So I think that they might have a better record than the Cardinals. I do agree that the Cardinals will be up there, but I also do think it's worth discussing the fact that the Niners might be kind of back in that playoff picture again.
Yeah, looking through teams, I definitely think that we could see 2 wildcard teams from the NFC West. They've expanded the playoffs. Is that this year, or does that start next year? I think that's this year, where there's a 3rd wildcard team in each conference. From the NFC, I mean, like whoever doesn't win the division in the East, the Eagles or the Cowboys, you'd have to assume that they'd be one of them. But looking at the rest of the league, I mean, I guess the Vikings have a shot. Either the Panthers or the Bucks, whoever like finishes second in that division, or the Saints. Like you could get one out of the South, but it's pretty realistic that second and third place in the NFC West could both take a spot and get in the playoffs. So that division definitely is going to be scary.
Definitely.
All right. So who you got? Conference winners. How's your Super Bowl look? Who do you think takes it this year? I know it's way too early, but
again, I'm gonna have to go Rams and Bills, and I think that we're gonna see the playoff picture start the season here, and I think this is gonna be a good Super Bowl like preview. And I think exactly that whoever wins this one will probably not win the Super Bowl. So I am hoping that the Rams win this Thursday game. But again, I do think that my picks are definitely Bills and Rams. And I think that the Bills will win probably by like a field goal, and it's going to be an amazing game. But
I'm with you on the Bills. I don't see anybody in the AFC that I can confidently say will beat the Bills. I think there'll be a couple of good teams, but I don't see anybody being as good as the Bills. I think it's a pretty weak conference this year. Like lots of teams are down. The NFC is a lot harder because while I think the NFC East is the best division, I don't trust the Eagles to win any playoff games. I definitely don't trust the Cowboys to win any playoff games. It's super, super hard to repeat, which like just puts me down on the Rams, even though I think they're a good team that's capable. I think I'm taking the Packers. I think they're going to have a pretty easy road playing against a relatively easy division, get a whole bunch of wins, some home games, and playing in Lambeau is going to be good. And just the NFC being so level where it's not super top heavy gives Rodgers his shot this year. I think I've got to put the Packers in the Super Bowl and let Rodgers take another crack at it.
Interesting. I think that agreed. Obviously, the North is an interesting conference compared to the Packers. But I do think in the playoffs, you'd have to either go through two top teams. And I think that at least I would hope that if he does make it, he gets to beat the Cardinals and the Rams, like two proven teams. That kind of like forces people to not question his greatness anymore. I do think that is a thing that people do. And they forget how great Rodgers is because he doesn't have like the same, resume as like Tom Brady. And I think he's just as good as Tom Brady, if not better. So
I can easily say that he's the best passer I've ever watched play football, but at some point that's got to turn into something, If Peyton Manning can go and win a Super Bowl where he throws 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions for an entire season and he can win it, you'd think that a campaign like Rodgers had last year would put him in the Super Bowl more frequently than he's been there. I hope he's got the weapons. I hope that they do well enough during the regular season to get that home field advantage. Obviously, he's going to have to take down at least one top team if everything shakes out well. Yeah, he's going to have to beat somebody from the NFC East or the NFC West to get there. But I mean, depending if they get that first seed, I think it could be a realistic path for them to put themselves back in a big game. All right, from here, I'm going to let you take over. Hit me with all your fantasy observations. Who you got? Who you're looking at? What kinds of things you're looking at for fantasy this year?
All right. Biggest thing. Oh my gosh. Scuff stream. All right. Anyways, no, I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be looking forward to is, again, the production of Tyreek Hill. I think that he's going to probably be one of the leading fantasy producers this season. Obviously, we have the normal, Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey, all those like big names that obviously produce all the time. But I think that Tyreek Hill is just going to take another level this year. And I think that with Tua or just another quarterback that he can be more than just number one. Like he is almost like the top star of that offense. I think that would be really big. Cause obviously in the Chiefs, you had, Kelsey, you had Mahomes, you had all these other players. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing looking forward, like producing wise. I do think that Kyle Pitts, great player last year. He's going to produce again. I think he's very underrated. I don't think people really see him because he is on the Falcons, and that's like, no one really pays attention to the Falcons right now, but I think he will have a great season.
And a stable target for Mariota, too. Not a whole lot of other people to throw to. He's going to get a bulk of catches, I think.
I agree. I think that another thing, again, going back to my Bills, uh, Gabriel Davis, he was absolutely incredible in the last game that he played, and he had like 4 TDs. Like, that was all against the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure, and like that was crazy. 8 receptions, 201 yards. I think it was like 4 TDs, and I think that that was without like with everyone being taken away, Josh Allen's targets. So Adams or Diggs. I forget who else now. But either way, I think he's going to be very vital. I think he's going to step into a number 2 this season, and I think it's going to be great. And I think that I'm just looking forward to watching the Bills play, man.
Easy to get hyped on a team that's that good. The one fantasy question I'm going to pitch your way as people are getting into either drafts that start right before the season or maybe starting a week late. In terms of drafting, for you personally, do you believe that it's better to pick a number 1 guy in an offense or a guy that's a number 2 in an offense because the number 1 is the one that gets taken away first? So your example there was, let's go back to OBJ, right? If he ends up on the Falcons, is he a better or worse fantasy candidate than if he ends up on the Bills where there's somebody else to take targets away from him?
I think it depends on the format. So there's the points per reception, and then there's the non-PPR leagues as well. So I think if it was a points per reception, then if he's on the Falcons, he's a better proven commodity. I think that if it doesn't matter about receptions where you don't get that extra point, I think that he'll get more production still in Buffalo than he would in the Falcons because everyone would focus more on him in Atlanta than versus Buffalo.
Yeah, I play fantasy, but I can't necessarily, profess myself to be any sort of expert. But there's always that internal struggle between, do you give it to the guy who's like, he's going to get lots of touches, but he is also the first option to get taken away, versus he may be second fiddle, but if the best corner is on him, then he's not getting the receptions anyway, so he's open more often.
Right.
Definitely interesting. Who's your fantasy sleeper? Give me a quarterback or a receiver, running back, somebody that people wouldn't necessarily look at that you're eyeing up this year.
DeAndre Swift. Like I said, I trust him. I've had him the past 2 years, and he's produced. And no matter who's been behind center, he's produced every time. There's been the few off and on games, but for the most part, he's actually one of the higher scoring running backs. And I do think that, again, he'll be that vocal part of that offense. I think he'll take another step forward. And I think that he's always been a sleeper in my mind. No one really looks at the Lions, so I'm definitely scooping him up.
Okay. And then how about a bust? Somebody that people might expect to be good and just hasn't done it or isn't going to do it.
I don't know, honestly. I think Diggs is actually going to be a bust.
Okay.
Just because I think that they have the offensive talent. And I think that while Diggs is one of the top receivers, even last year he was, rated one of the top receivers, it still takes away from his fantasy draft or like his fantasy stock if other receivers are there. And I think that's a good thing for the Bills as a team. But fantasy-wise, I don't think you want to be drafting Diggs too much. Obviously, you should pick him up if you can, but I wouldn't put that much trust if you need a high-end flex player for that.
Okay. One last thing for fantasy before we get into some gambling stuff. I know that you were talking a little bit that you didn't want to reveal too much before your own draft, but what's your draft strategy look like for you personally? Is there a right or a wrong place to take certain players, certain positions? What's your mindset going into a draft?
I think that usually I go for either a high-end receiver or a high-end running back at the start. Unfortunately, I also do go for a high-end tight end in the first 2 rounds if I can. Tight ends are not really like that. There's not too many tight ends that can make a difference fantasy-wise, and I think they are very limited. So I think that when it comes to almost like a first pick, second pick, you should be picking up a really good tight end. I think that receivers and running backs, they come and go, right? So if you can get your hands on Ezekiel Elliott, go for it, do it. But I think that, getting someone who's a star like Kyle Pitts on, a Falcons, but he's a tight end, later on, you could always get, another number 2 or another number 1 just on a lesser team. I think that is more vital. I think that getting a tight end that can prove is probably one of your best things that you should do.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that like the difference between quarterbacks is pretty minimal. You know, anybody can have a great week or a bad week, but if you hit the average, the difference between top end and low end starting quarterbacks are pretty slim. I think receivers and running backs are obviously more hit and miss on certain offenses. There's guys that you can rely on, obviously, but tight ends, I mean, the difference between, you know, a top 10 and a top, or like the top tight end and the top 15 tight end is a pretty big gap to do so consistently.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. So last thing we'll get to is just picking against the spread for the week. I think just for the interest of time, we'll hit these in pretty quick hits. Just give a spread, both pick a winner, we'll move on. Thursday night game to start off the season. Bills at the Rams. Bills minus 2.5. Who you got?
I think I'm going over.
Okay. Man, you give me Rams at home with 2.5 points. I'm taking them too. You give me Rams and 3 extra points. I'll happily take that. I got Steelers at the Bengals. Bengals minus 6.5 at home.
Over.
All right. We'll take. I think we're going to take Cincy. I think they can beat Pittsburgh by 7. We'll take Eagles at the Lions. Lions plus 3.5 at home.
Well, I'm taking the Eagles there. I don't trust Jared Goff, so I think that the Eagles would win by a lot.
Yeah, I'll take the Eagles. I think they'll win by more than 4. We'll be all right with that one. Yeah. I got Colts Texans. Texans plus 7.5 at home.
Colts. They're probably going to win by more than 7. So.
I was going to say, I think I'd still take the Colts if you gave me minus 10. So I'll take the Colts. All right. Saints Falcons. Falcons plus 5.5.
I'm going to go with Saints, and I think they probably do win that, probably on a TD. So
okay, this one's tough. 5.5 feels really spot on, but I think I'll take the Falcons just because they're at home. I don't know how to feel about the Saints. Ravens Jets plus 6.5 in New York.
Ravens,
yeah.
And yeah, they win by more than 6,
and not close. I got Patriots Dolphins minus 3.5 at home. Maybe the first time in decades we've seen the Dolphins be favorites against the Patriots.
Right? I would say that the Dolphins are going to win this, and I think they actually would win this more than 3 points, though, too.
I feel like the past few seasons we've seen both of them win the away games. I think if you're going to give me the Patriots away plus points, I think I'm taking the Patriots. Browns Panthers minus 2.5 at home.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I'm taking the Panthers by a lot more than 2.5. Baker's got something to prove, and I don't think Cleveland prepped too much with.
To open that.
Yeah. All right. Niners Bears plus 6.5.
Niners, a lot more than 6.
I think I'm with you. 6.5 still feels pretty close for me, but I think they should win by a touchdown. Jags Commanders minus 2.5.
I don't really know about this one. I haven't seen either one of them really play, so I'm gonna just go. Like I would say, probably the Commanders, but
yeah, I think I'm with you.
Very spot on.
Yeah, they're both just such bad teams. It's so hard to pick. I guess I'm gonna take the Commanders just because they're at home, and we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
A good one. Possibly the game of Sunday, not game of the week, but Sunday's best game. Raiders at Chargers. Chargers minus 3.5.
That feels very good. I'm taking the Chargers though, but I think that's very close. Yeah.
I'm less confident, but I think I'm with you. I'll take the Chargers. Giants at Tennessee. Tennessee's minus 5.5.
Tennessee by more than 5.5.
All right. I think I'm with you. Giants just aren't good. Tennessee at home. Chalk it up. Yeah. Chiefs Cardinals plus 5.5 at home.
I'm gonna go Cardinals. I do agree that 5.5 is probably the base where they're gonna be. So I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's so hard to pick against the Chiefs until they prove to me that I shouldn't. But the Cardinals at home and points, I gotta take them.
Exactly.
Packers Vikings plus 1.5 at home.
Interesting. I'm going Packers.
I
more than a point.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that deserves much more than 1.5. Packers should win that one. Bucks Cowboys plus 2.5 at home.
I don't know. I think that this one will be, because they're at home, I think I'll go with the Cowboys. I do think that's pretty accurate though.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys will win straight up, to be honest with you. And then being at home, I'm picking against Brady. He just doesn't look that great. I'm taking the Cowboys. Broncos Seahawks. Seahawks are plus 6.5 at home.
I'm gonna go Broncos.
I think I'm with you.
Yeah, I think it would be around a touchdown. So
yeah, that spread's a little bit big. I don't know how good the Broncos are actually going to be, but I think I can trust them to win by a touchdown. Yeah. All right, and then that was Monday night's game. So that's everything for the week. Lines are brought to you by FanDuel. That's just where I pulled them from. By the time you guys watch or listen to this podcast, we did these on Tuesday afternoon, so lines are obviously subject to change by game time. And obviously, as always, please gamble responsibly. We're not here giving advice, just giving our picks. That's all there is to it. Before we wrap up for the week, you got anything else?
Nothing. I'm just excited to get started.
Me too, man. Real hyped for football. Gonna sit my bum ass on the couch all day Sunday and ingest as much football as I possibly can.
That's the plan.
All right. Well, I think for this week that wraps us up. As always, catch both of us on Twitch. Noah at It's Oh Noah, myself at Ted Green Eagles. Both of those will be linked in the description. You can hop in both of our Discords. They'll also be linked below. Thanks for supporting the Cringe Crew, and we'll see you next week.